What the hell?
Faithful ride with me. Red and gold blooded to the day I die. Reppin' on a gang and it's all I bleed. Racking up dubs in my Levi jeans. And we run over the league with our whole team. We that number one seed cause we ballin'. Putting in that work early in the morning. Super Bowl team and now these haters salty.
That was weird.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to IE Sports Radio. I'm Niners Jess, along with Ty Alston, Maddie B, and your girl Bex. We are the East Coast Red and Gold. What's up, Faithful?
What's going on?
Hey.
It's training camp here yet?
Everybody.
What's that, Maddie?
Says training camp here yet?
20 days.
Yep, big 2-0.
Getting close.
3 weeks.
Days. All right, well, let's bring on our special guest. Let's welcome Amin, the Dream. What's going on?
Amin,
welcome to the show, Amin.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
How's it going?
Good. You know, summer. I mean, when you're in summer, it's a little bit hot out here, but besides that, I'm doing good.
Awesome. And you're done with school?
Yep.
Cool.
For now.
Very cool.
For now.
Well, that's good. At least you get to enjoy your summer now. All right. So it's been and I'm being facetious here, it's been a normal offseason for the 49ers.
Totally.
As far as the quarterback talk. But I mean, for you, like which story, which narrative, which have you paid attention to?
I mean, the narrative, this is not something that isn't unheard of, but the narrative that everybody's talking about is that Trey Lance is quarterback 2, if not quarterback 3 on this team. And that he's not even competing for the starting spot. And all you see is these little articles and rumors and reports coming out from Schefter and all these guys is that Lance doesn't even get an opportunity to compete for QB1, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, how much you've given up for Trey Lance and the assets that you gave up to get Trey Lance, I mean, it's kind of stupid to think in a year where Brock Purdy is injured and who knows what his timetable will be or when he's going to be able to suit up, to think that Trey Lance isn't going to get an opportunity. So that's probably one that comes to mind is, you know, how people are saying that Trey Lance has no shot of being quarterback 1 and how he's competing with Brandon Allen and guys like Sam Darnold for quarterback 2.
Ty, what do you think about that?
Well, it's not even he's competing. At this point, he's not even competing for QB2. He's competing with Brandon Allen for QB3. That's the interesting part. If you really listen to what these outside guys are saying, they're basically saying he's already QB3 and he's competing with Brandon Allen, a proven veteran. That one really got me. Someone said he's a proven veteran in the league for QB3. So it's funny how, you know, it's just a year ago he was the starting quarterback and they believed he can do things for the team. And now there's this narrative being spun that 2 guys who are coming in that are still learning the playbook, you know, haven't even thrown real passes to receivers yet, are somehow ahead of him and competing with him. It's the funniest thing ever.
I think people need to listen more to Matt Mayoko and Jennifer Lee Chan.
Most definitely.
And we're going to touch on that, but Matt Mayoko had said that he doesn't hear any rumors that Trey Lance is QB3. He doesn't hear anything. And he said that they're not even sure that the 49ers know at this point. Becca, what do you think?
Bryant, stop it.
You know, just saw Bryant's comment. I don't know. for me, I don't pay attention to the rest of that. I listen to the coaches, and when they speak, I listen carefully to their words. And for me, they're telling you as long as Purdy's healthy, he's going to start. And I think that takes some of the quarterback controversy away. If Purdy gets out there, he starts and he dunks it, he tanks, then Trey Lance is going to be ready to step in there. I think they're trying to drum up a quarterback 2-3 competition narrative just for the sake of competition, but I don't really think there is one. I mean, is it nice having Sam Darnold there for competition? Sure. But I don't know. By all accounts, Trey Lance is looking great in the offseason. He's put in a lot of work. He's doing everything he needs to do to set himself up for success, win, and if he gets another shot at it. But for now, I think, Purdy's the starter. They've made that very clear as long as he's able to start.
Maddie, what do you think?
Sam Darnold still says he's learning the playbook. Calls it a work in progress, right?
Thank you.
And we're trying to create this depth chart narrative. And I saw a tweet that Ty posted about how Trey had a positive interview with Jennifer Lee Chan. And the very first comment on there was someone yapping and yammering about how Trey Lance was worthy of all these picks and blah and let it go and whatever. And it's like, I guess I don't understand what anyone wants at this point. So I really want to just back this up and really big picture this for everyone, from ages 10 to 100 here, and really just kind of zoom this in. Okay. The 49ers were in the market for a franchise quarterback because the quarterback that they had in 2019 made a throw in the fourth quarter that, missed a throw in the fourth quarter that could have given them the lead. Now, whether they blame that on him, whether they blame that on the receiver, whoever, but the receiver didn't come back, and they immediately tried to upgrade at quarterback the very next season, trading 3 first-round picks to move up from 12 to 3. They moved up from 12 to 3 because they wanted to have their choice of quarterbacks and not just be stuck with one, because if they would have been okay being stuck with one, they probably would have stayed at 12. Instead, they wanted to see 12, but they only wanted to see the other guy in comparison to the other guy because they wanted to see if the other guy would go good. Also in 2020, they got their buttholes ripped out by a guy by the name of Josh Allen. Maybe you've heard of him. He's what's called a dual threat quarterback who runs and throws. And I'm pretty sure the sting from that beating stayed with the 49ers for a good long time, which is why Trey Lance probably won out in the end. Now, Trey Lance accidentally hurts his finger in the preseason game in a freak manner and then has another weird injury later. Like, guys just had some bad luck and some unique circumstances and situations. But at the end of the day, you don't make it to the playoffs in 2021 without Trey Lance. Everyone seems to forget about that, but that's okay. That's fine. Let's just wipe that out from history. I'm sure that important game that he played that actually helped them get in the playoffs so that they could beat the Rams the next week and get in, clearly didn't mean anything. So thank you for that. And then they just happened to luck into Brock Purdy, right? Like, they had already bought a house, but they had put it an offer for a little rebuild place that was on the beach. And sure enough, their offer got taken. So they ended up with 2, right? And while they're filling up the place for the Airbnb, turns out there's a big plumbing issue in the place that they were going to live in. So now they got to move everything into the Airbnb really quick. And guess what? They really like the Airbnb. You got a beautiful view. It's very breezy, and it just kind of fits their style. But at the same time, they're still keeping the other house because they know eventually they're probably going to need to stay there for one reason or another. So Trey Lance may not have recouped his value right now quite yet, but this whole thing has a long time to go. And if he wins them one key game this year that they needed, boy, I would have traded 3 first-round picks for a competent backup quarterback in last year's NFC title game. And by competent and healthy, So at that point, I think he'll make it. He'll get to where he needs to be, right? Like, but at the end of the day, that's just how this works. Like, Purdy's come in and snuck it in. He's done the thing, and as Kyle Shanahan said in early May, he's done it. He's done it. That's all he says is he's done it. All these things that we want Trey to do, Brock has done it already. And yes, he did it in a small sample size. And yes, he's hurt. And yes, we really need to make sure that he's fully 100% all the way back before he takes snaps against the Steelers in week 1. But clearly that's the way they're going to go. And I honestly don't care who's QB2 or QB3 to start the season. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I want 4 quarterbacks on this team. Go to it on the practice squad, 3 good ones in the room, up on the main roster, just like the old days, Montana, Young, and Bono. And then we're covered against anything. Because when we're not covered against anything, we end up playing people like CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins and Jim Druckenmiller and all these other names out there. So I would much rather be picking from this crop, 2 of which were picked number 3 overall, and one of whom was Mr. Irrelevant and may end up being one of the greatest draft values of all time.
See, but
You
that's the
forgot
thing.
Gio Kamasi.
The conversation isn't about the QBs amongst us fans. We're happy with the quarterback room. We saw last year that building a strong quarterback room is valuable. It helps us, right? We're cool with that. The problem is these people who were not at OTAs, haven't even been to California, haven't spoken to anyone from the team, are going on national TV
That's a good
and
one.
spewing things. They're just like, oh yeah, the 49ers, oh yeah, they're tired of this guy and they like that guy. Oh, and if this guy can do something, then they'll go with that guy and don't sleep on the other guy. And it's like, wait a minute, time out. Do you really expect me to believe this BS? That's the problem.
We all know that we know. It's the problem as you've seen the masses as they do things and understand things and grasp things, right? It's the same talking points every 2.5 to 4.5 weeks where the same people go around to do their same thing. It's like, okay, they talked about this team. They talked about that. Oh, it's time to talk about the 49ers again. What's going on? We're just going to refresh some of the things that we remember that we heard from around the draft and freshen it up right here, right? And that's typically what happens because they're trying to create content. They are now officially trying to make this a 24/7 365. They used to kind of understand that it's a slow news time, so don't expect much in June and July. And then they started dropping these nuggets here and there, like important ones over the last few years. So now they feel like they have to be 24/7 365, which I get. But if you're just recycling the same talking points just in a different manner, while at the same time saying the same things that really can't be refuted until they are refuted, and then they're refuted again 2.5 weeks later when you do it again. It just keeps going on and on and on. Nobody knows who's going to be 2 and 3 until training camp ends. And really until preseason ends, right? At the end of the day. If somebody comes out until that depth chart comes out, we have no idea. And frankly, I don't care because I usually assume that whoever they've got playing at quarterback is going to start the game is going to give us our best chance to win. I know I'm crazy, but I feel like they pay these coaches good money to make those decisions. And I'm just going to go ahead, step back and let them make that as such. But I would be excited with any of the 3 just because of different pedigrees, because at the end of the day, this place is starting to turn into a slow reclamation project, right? This is becoming the Alabama offensive coordinator job. This could be like that for quarterbacks. It's already like that for defensive linemen. Hello, Cleveland Farrell, right? And then look at all the guys that have already gotten money to go other places, right? This is a spot where if you can make it here, you can pretty much make it anywhere. So if somebody can make it here and they can make it somewhere else, good on them, man. So you're going to have a lot of those guys rolling into the next few years.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't even think Kyle would announce anything. I think we're just, like you said, depth chart's going to come out, and that's how we're going to see.
What do you think? Think about during the season, real quick, when Matt alluded to, when we had that Texans game coming up, and we didn't know who was going to start.
Exactly, I was about to say
that. It's going to be Trey. It's going to be Jimmy, and then we didn't know until that Friday or Saturday, and Kyle finally said, oh yeah, Trey's going to start. He doesn't just tell you something for the sake of you wanting to know. When he makes a decision, he will announce it. Go ahead, Amin. I'm sorry.
No, you made up a great point. I was just about to say that. Like, he didn't announce it until like the Saturday of the game, and like a lot of us Niners fans had the feeling that it was going to be Trey Lance, so we didn't know. But like, what do all Niners fans want? What all Niners fans want with this roster is winning Super Bowl #6, right? That's what we all want. We all want that. That's what every team wants, right? And you play football season, you want to win the championship. That's the ultimate goal. If you break down this quarterback situation, regardless of what people are talking about with Purdy, Lance, and even Sam Darnold, let's look at Sam Darnold, for example. Sam Darnold is a guy that I'm not saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer. People are saying he's going to come and become a Pro Bowler and become yada, yada, yada. Like, no, he's not going to be a Pro Bowler with the Niners. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer with the Niners. But do I have confidence in if Sam Darnold has to come in and play snaps under center for the 49ers if he can win football games and that we could still be successful with Sam Darnold? Yes, I do believe that. Now, with Brock Purdy, we've seen what Brock Purdy can do, right? Is he the most athletic guy? Not necessarily, but can he, extend plays sometimes? Can he run around? Can he, kind of do a little bit? Yes, he can. But he executes his offense at a high level, and the most important thing is that Kyle Shanahan trusts him. And when you see him under center, he makes the right decisions. He's accurate, and that's the thing. And he doesn't make mistakes. So we know what Brock Purdy is. Now, the only thing when you look at this season is he's coming off an elbow injury, and you don't know how he's going to respond coming off that elbow injury. And you look at Jimmy Garoppolo after coming off injury. Jimmy was never the same. And with Brock Purdy, I trust Brock Purdy, his ability and what his reads and his decision making. I trust that. But the only thing is, after coming off an injury, I don't know if Brock Purdy will have the same level of confidence as he did the season prior. Where if he goes into this season with that elbow injury, I don't know if he's going to have that same level of confidence. Now with Trey Lance, I'm a huge Trey Lance believer. I'm a huge Trey Lance fan. Not only the person, but also the player. And for me, I don't decide, regardless of depth chart, I want to see, training camp and preseason. That's how I really identify, okay, is Trey Lance, should he be considered quarterback one, before week one starts? Should Niners announce him as quarterback one? Is it Sam Darnold? When I look at what's happening in training camp, when I look at what's happening on 11 on 11s, when I see them actually play in the preseason, that's how I really look at, okay, when I actually see it with my own two eyes, okay, you know what? Trey Lance should be the starting quarterback. Oh, it should be Sam Darnold. I wasn't really impressed by what I saw with Trey Lance. Vice versa. But the thing is, it was Trey Lance, and it's the same reason why the Niners drafted him. The same reason why the Niners drafted Trey Lance is because of the upside. Because Trey Lance can do things that we haven't seen any, Niners quarterback do in like 20 years, outside of maybe Colin Kaepernick, right? Even though that was a short period of time, is that he can extend plays. He has he could throw the deep ball. And the thing with Trey Lance is if he develops and becomes what we, all hope that he does, Trey Lance can be the Niners' not only franchise quarterback, can be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, could be a franchise guy, could be considered an elite quarterback around the league, and can help when the Niners win the Super Bowl. And if you look at the teams even right now that's winning the Super Bowl or that's consistently making deep runs in the playoffs, you have the biggest thing on all those teams is not necessarily having a great defense, but it's if you have a franchise guy, if you have that franchise quarterback. And you look at Mahomes, like Mahomes doesn't have the greatest defense, but Mahomes gets it done, and Mahomes is a franchise quarterback. And all these teams, right, that the national media loves to talk about, the Bills, the Bengals, whatever team, all those teams have franchise guys. And that's what I believe in Trey Lance, is that he could be the franchise guy. Now the thing is, he also has to play. And obviously, if he sucks it up in preseason or he's sucking in training camp, obviously you can't put the kid out there. You just can't. If he's not performing or he's really struggling, then it's kind of unfair to put him out there. But if he is doing well in training camp and you see the progression and you see him improve and you see him making reads and you see him getting better, then it would be almost stupid not to start Trey Lance week one, right? Because you invested so much into him, and the only way that he really gets better is by playing. If that makes sense.
I agree. And we invested in Brock. And the only way he gets better is by playing. We have a good problem on our hands.
And also right? on top of that, with Trey Lance and with Brock Purdy, I wouldn't trade any of those guys, because people are talking about will the Niners trade Trey Lance? Will the Niners trade, yada yada yada. Like, the thing is, with this team, bro, with the injuries that we have at quarterback, or even in general, I'd love to have Trey Lance or Brock Purdy on the team this year. Even if Brock Purdy can't suit up until week 6, whatever it might be, or even Trey Lance, if he's not ready and Sam Darnold is quarterback week 1, I would love to have these two guys behind them, because I trust their ability to go in, and if we need them to come in and win football games, that they can. and that they're capable.
I mean, I want to circle back on something you said at first. We talked about the idea of Brock Purdy, seeing ghosts or not being a little more afraid or getting into his own head after being injured. It'll be interesting to see how he performs, in full contact live football with pressure coming, knowing that he got injured once, and how that seems to affect some quarterbacks and more than others. So it's definitely a concern that I have, and hopefully he's mentally, prepared and able to overcome that. But that is one of the things that I'm worried about, whether or not he starts to have, let those things get to him.
Tony Culp says, is finding a franchise quarterback like finding a genie in a bottle. The Niners have been dealing with struggling quarterbacks since Garcia.
I mean, they had a franchise quarterback that just didn't handle him properly, and Alex Smith. Like, they didn't give him the love and support and consistency that was needed, right? Like, if you could go back in time and snag 2005 Alex Smith and put him in the Kyle Shanahan system, I would go ahead and say that I think Alex Smith is going to have a hell of a little bit different career, right?
Different outcome, right?
Way different outcome.
Think about Aaron Rodgers getting drafted and going through all the things Alex Smith did.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have the same Aaron Rodgers you have,
he'd be out of the league doing like bootleg podcasts about
he'd be gone. He'd be out there smoking doobies, doing podcasts, talking Zen. Yeah, man. No, he was in the league.
He'd be doing it live from Flat Earth.
Disappearing in the retreat hut for 3 weeks or whatever it was.
Can I let me?
Go ahead.
I was actually gonna read that. Khalees said, with all the mudslinging from both sides, Trey and Brock supporters, I'm starting to think some fans would rather win with their guy. I just simply want to win 6. See, Khalees, this is the thing. You have common sense. Okay, that's the thing. That's if there's anything that this country has shown you in the last, I don't know, let's go with about 25 years. They don't really care about everybody winning. They only care about their guy winning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or their person winning, or however you want to word it. Be damned the consequences on the other side. So, like, to me, that's just a juxtaposition of society at this point. I just don't understand why it's such a hard line. Like, people just going out of their way to either look for bad Brock news or look for bad Trey news and like be the first to talk about it. I don't understand that mindset. How would these people have survived young Montana? That's what I want to know. Like, would they have imploded? Would they have turned into like a puddle of goo and like melted? Like, I don't like, can you imagine today, like if Kyle Shanahan before week 1 of the preseason goes, we've got 2 really good quarterbacks and they're going to have to compete and figure out who's going to be the starter, Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. Let's go. But Bill Walsh did that in 1988 with Steve Young and Joe Montana. 1988. They went on to win a Super Bowl that year. All because Joe Montana got benched in a playoff game. Like, it's ridiculous.
He was doing it during the season.
Yeah, he was doing it during the season. He was looking for injuries or reasons to rest Joe to get Steve Young in there. And if he had won the Phoenix game in 1988, which they got a really bad spot on that call, it's very possible he would have continued playing for the rest of the year. Now, how's the universe different there if Steve Young is a starter in 1988 moving forward instead of Joe Montana? So it all just goes into patience and letting the universe help you pick your guy, right? And people need to have that because that's pretty much how it works. It is completely, at the end of the day, Kyle and John and Brian Greasy and everybody, the ghost of Bill Walsh could help them friggin' plan who's going to be the next quarterback. But at the end of the day, we don't really know how things are going to fall. Somebody could, tear their UCL in an NFC title game, or somebody could, break their leg in a freak accident in a home game against Seattle. Oh, gosh, golly gee, we've seen that happen twice now. Plus, we saw a dude. One thing I did want to go back on, Garoppolo did play well after the Denver game. Since that injury, that was probably the best he had played since 2019, up until the point he, again, got injured trying to be our hero and carry 2 guys on his back like he's piggybacking. But that was probably the best stretch he'd played. Like, we were going to ride the crest of that contract year. but it wasn't meant to be. Instead, it was Brock Purdy time, and Brock Purdy took advantage of it, right? Trey Lance just didn't get that opportunity to take advantage of it, and I feel bad for Trey Lance because the deck was stacked against him already with all the things that they did to move up to get him, right? And the fact that his COVID season only had one game or two games or 1.5 games, depending on how you want to treat one of the opponents, and then base everything off of 29. Like, the dude's been up against it. He works hard. He keeps a very, very solid, positive attitude. The media seems to really can't say enough good things about him. He's healthy. He's finally got that healthy finger, which should help with that accuracy. And if his accuracy is doing good, like, Trey Lance is going to come in handy at some point. Whether he's the starter week 1, whether he's the starter week another time for whatever reason, Trey Lance is going to be a key to something for this team. So be patient and just let the path play out, man.
I mean,
That's all you
I
can
agree.
do.
Regardless of who I might have a preference as who I want to start as the quarterback of the 49ers, I just want this team to win and be successful, right? I just want this
Right.
team to win the championship. So I might have a preference on who I'd rather have, but at the same time, even if Sam Darnold is freaking starting or Brandon Allen is starting, right? If this Niners offense is doing well, we're able to move the ball downfield, we're able to score touchdowns, we're able to win football games. That's all that matters to me. Because at first, right, like, and I've said this before, I think even on this show, I'm a Niners fan first, regardless of I love Trey Lance. I love him to death, right? I even have a Trey Lance jersey. I even had a Jimmy Garoppolo jersey. I used to love Jimmy Garoppolo. But regardless of who, which player I like or whatever, like, I just want this team to be successful. So whoever is the starting quarterback, as long as they're able to move the ball downfield, the offense is executing at a high level, we're efficient, and we're putting up points and we're winning football games, I'm fine with that. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's all I want.
And what's not to love about either of those guys? I mean, they've been class acts and really, stand up guys and doing their job. So yeah, no shame in your game there.
I mean, who is your preference?
Oh, it's Trey Lance. It's Trey Lance only because of how much you gave up for him. And on top of that, Trey Lance hasn't gotten the opportunity. So right now, just based off as it is right now, because of Brock Purdy's injury, with Sam Darnold or Trey Lance, I would choose Trey Lance. Now the thing is, I'm not a biased Trey Lance fan. If Trey Lance comes out in preseason or in training camp and he's sucking so bad, right, or he's not able to make reads, he's missing throws, he's overthrowing guys, then of course you start Sam Darnold week 1, right? Because he probably puts you, if you look at what Trey Lance hypothetically, just all talking hypotheticals, right? If Trey Lance is hypothetically struggling, Sam Darnold would probably, and Sam Darnold is going out and he's playing efficient, he's moving the ball downfield, and he's more efficient than Trey Lance, and he's not making as many mistakes. And of course, it would be dumb not to start Sam Darnold week 1 because he probably in that moment in time gives you the best chance to win. But if Trey Lance is doing well and he is showing you improvement and the offense is doing fine with Trey Lance under center and he's having a good training camp, he's having a good preseason, then I would probably lean more towards Trey Lance and Sam Darnold just to see what he's able to do, because Trey Lance hasn't gotten the opportunity, and because you gave up so much to get him, sooner or later you have to see what he's able to do on the field. So I would give him the opportunity.
What if Brock was starting and they brought Trey in for a package? What do you guys think?
No, absolutely not.
How'd that work his rookie year? I mean, and I say that seriously with all seriousness. Yeah. How did that work his rookie year? It kind of, like, at that point, all he did was turn him into kind of an 11th man running the quarterback. Like, there was no running quarterback. Like, there was no like Taysom Hill. Like, you don't know what's going to work there. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah. Trent Sherfield caught the first pass in Detroit, right? Yay, touchdown. But then, like, everything after that was a run to the left or a run to the right, coming out of that shotgun or that pistol. And it didn't really make a lot of sense to me in terms of how that would work. But I think you want Purdy in there getting snaps. I don't think you want to be screwing up the I'm not a proponent of it. I don't care who the starter is. I don't think you take him out for 3 or 4 plays. I don't
either.
Unless you're doing like a fake or some sort of like shenanigan, like, I don't get it. I really, really don't get it. Like, I wouldn't. because as soon as you do, how many times have we seen this team do something really good, have a really good drive where they can't be stopped, and then they do a reverse and like somebody drops the ball and they end up having an 11-yard loss. You're like, oh well, there goes that drive.
Kill the momentum.
Yep.
Well, that drive was cute. That was nice. I'm glad that went through. It's
Let's
the
run
same.
the same play 3 times in a row.
Right. It's the same.
Never
Well, no,
been.
or they do run the same play 3 times in a row. They don't stop, but they're like, on the fourth, we're going to do something way different off the board. I'm like, oh yes, let's do that on the fourth try instead of just continuing to go until they stop you.
That's when the
Right.
reverse happens, and you're like,
Right.
why?
The flea flicker that turns into an interception, or a sack, or
Right.
it's just some silliness. You know
Tackle
what I
in the
mean?
backfield for a loss of
Yeah.
crazy.
you don't-
Yeah.
Yeah,
you don't
I
do
don't like that idea either. I just wanted to ask the question. See what
Both
you
these
think.
guys are both super young. They're both still developing.
Yeah.
They need the reps.
Yeah.
And I know it's like a blessing and a curse. Okay, they both need reps. How can I maybe get one guy some? No. Leave that guy in and just stick with him and let him get all the reps he can, even if they're just handoffs. Those still count. No need to be switching them.
For the Niners to get a king's ransom for Lance in any sort of trade, he is going to have a Matt Flynn game where he has like 6 touchdown passes, right? Now, hopefully that's in week 18 next year against the Rams, right? Maybe that can be his trade value game, and that would be fantastic. Allen is also better than people think. I'm also very surprised that they got Brandon Allen, but maybe they thought somebody could get hurt during OTAs or something like that. And they wanted to be protected. But I figured Brandon Allen would be on somebody's roster this year. I didn't think he'd be like kind of cool, chilling, being the fourth, the practice squad QB here. But again, this is one of those places where you can get yourself rehabbed and straightened out, right? Get your playbook right and understand the Shanahan offense, which is, around the league in quite a few places right now. So, you kind of up your marketability. It's kind of like he's taking a class for IT cybersecurity and he's looking to improve his job opportunities, right? It's kind of the same deal.
You always need 4 QBs in camp. Brandon
Yeah.
Allen was number 4. And he's part of that stupid mold that we just seem to get. Quarterbacks with a quick release that can have a little bit of mobility and, do those type of things. That's why he's here.
Just seems like a luxury for a fourth. You know what I mean? Like for a Nate Sudfeld type, like this is one thing. If there's one thing, they have spent money on that QB room. I mean, I spent $2 million on Nate Sudfeld last year to be cut in camp for Brock Purdy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was already kind of a cost there. So it's really, I just find it interesting that they really they overinvested in that fourth one just to make sure they built that room that strongly. So it kind of backs up everything they say about having that competition in every single room possible.
I just want to go back to the question about the draft cap or trade capital for Trey Lance. There's all this talk about he may be QB3 or competing at QB4. How are we getting a king's ransom if that's the narrative
Exactly.
that's floating out there that, he's not even QB2, right? So I think, I think that's just all talk, but, certainly I think he is QB2 or, a really strong QB2, but I would agree. I think he has to have a really great showing before somebody's willing to throw a king's ransom at us to say, hey, we want this guy on our team. Here's what we're willing to offer you to get.
Look at Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, who's on the Jets, who was a 3rd overall pick, who had played multitude of games, who struggled in a lot of those games, right? Obviously with Adam Gase in that Jet system. But the next year the year that he got traded to the Panthers, look at what he got with the Panthers. What, like a second maybe? I think a 4th.
Yeah.
And that's the most they got was like a second.
Yeah.
If Trey Lance doesn't even hypothetically play this year, or even if he plays week 18 or whatever the case might be, one game, and yes, if he throws a 6 touchdown game, maybe you might get a second at most.
Right.
But you're not getting a king's ransom. If the Jets didn't get a king's ransom for Sam Darnold, who played almost 2 or 3 full seasons,
right,
the Niners aren't going to get a king's ransom for Trey Lance. It's just not going to work that way. The only way that a team would be maybe even willing to give up a second is if they really believe in Trey Lance, but that also means that Trey Lance has to play or has to have something, some sort of, footage besides what he already has.
Demonstrate some sort of viability. Yeah.
And the other thing about King's ransom is that term needs to be taken in a couple of different ways, right? Like a second and a fourth might be a King's ransom,
Yeah.
right? As Amin just said, because he's going to build up his stuff. Now, if he plays in preseason next year and absolutely kills it, and then gets a start in the year, whether it's in a game that matters or a Week 18 game where the Rams are trying to knock them off and he blows them off the field, yeah, somebody might give up a first for him, because I don't know how many good quarterbacks there are after the top two guys next year, right? We don't know how that class looks, because we're not really going to know how they're going to look this year until they play. But
You're right.
If he does that, he's going to have a little bit more NFL tape. If he has more NFL tape, somebody may be intrigued. Somebody that wanted to draft him at that time might be intrigued. Same reason that the 49ers went for Sam Darnold. Like, they had a lot of tape on Sam Darnold. They liked what they saw, even after everything that happened with the Jets, which you got a bad offensive line, an offensive system that didn't really fit his skills or needs, and really a whole place that was completely upended and overdone and redone and multiple times, right? And he basically gets sent out. He gets sent out into a winter storm with no coat, facing the Patriots at that time. and people are like, "Wow, I can't believe he can't figure out this Belichick defense." I'm like, "Well, what did we give him here, right? Like, what did you give him to do?" And then he gets to Carolina last year, kind of gets a fresh opportunity and does play well. Now, he gets figured out later, but that also tends to coincide with this Christian McCaffrey thing. When Christian McCaffrey got hurt, that didn't really help his standing either. But no matter what he's done more than Josh Rosen to remake his career, right? Like, even if at this point he just finishes up being like everybody's favorite backup, wherever that might be, like, he's still done more to like keep his career going and at least try to give himself a chance to remove that bust label, or give himself a chance to have a shining moment later, as opposed to Rosen, who's basically out of the league now and has been pretty much everywhere and then let go in a few months. So it's real interesting to see how people don't handle success and then fall off. So it'll be interesting to see if he takes like the Jim Plunkett route, or if he goes the Josh Rosen route or the Johnny Manziel route or something like that. He seems like a good dude. I don't think he's going to do the Johnny Manziel.
I still remember Josh Rosen draft night was like, "There's going to be 9 mistakes made ahead of me, and over the course of my career, I'm going to make sure." He said something like that.
Yeah.
You try to motivate yourself, and that didn't seem to work out. See, no, that was a guy right there that they brought in, and they're like, "Oh, we can rehabilitate that guy," and they did not get him rehabilitated. They did not. So that tells me that there's nothing to work with there, right? That's what it seems like. There's nope. We can't. There's nope. That car's not going to pass inspection is really what it boils down to, right? Like, you're going to have to put some exhaust work into that or something.
Ty, why were you shaking your head?
Oh, because he said Sam Darnold played well. I don't know what you were looking at.
For him. Like, let's be real here.
Oh, for him. Okay, you're for him.
I'm not saying like he's not Roger Staubach in the 70s,
fired.
right? Like, yeah, he's like, he was somewhat competent on a team that really didn't have a heck of a lot of talent, right? Until they caught up to him, in week 5 or whatever it was that year. So, yeah. And then if you don't have that McCaffrey safety valve, which, if you kind of go back, maybe that's one of the reasons that this offense, like, we've gone over it. McCaffrey fits this offense like a glove, but he can pretty much fit any offense like a glove, because the struggling QB is always going to look for the running back who can catch it at the last second, right? They're going to look for the tight end, and they're going to look for the running back. And when you have a Christian McCaffrey there, he's going to make a lot of QBs look a lot better. So,
but
he's already got that going.
Getting overworked and getting injured, and then you're without your running back. So there's a downside to that.
Ty just went from 10% to 100%.
I'm glad he let me clarify, because I think he really thought I was going to
So
advocate for Sam for the Hall or something,
So this is a popular question on Twitter. Amin, I'm going to start with you. Do we have a franchise quarterback?
We don't know yet, right? We don't know yet. You look at with Trey Lance, we know the potential there. With Brock Purdy, you saw obviously a more larger sample size, but even then, we saw Jimmy Garoppolo do it also with that 6-game stretch where he was balling out and he looked like the Niners' next franchise quarterback, and the Niners gave him this bag, and then obviously he comes off injury, and he kind of was up and down after that, but we don't know yet. Honestly, there's 3 guys. I wouldn't necessarily say 3, but I would say there's 2 guys on this roster with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy that can potentially be your franchise guy and that are more than capable of being your franchise guy. But as it sits right now, with Trey Lance, you don't know. He has the potential, but you don't know if it'll all come together. And he also has a small sample size. And then with Brock Purdy, you have a larger sample size. But after coming off an injury, will he be the same? And on top of that, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo also have the little 5, 6, 7 game stretch where he was amazing. And then after that, Jimmy Garoppolo's kind of just up and down. He wasn't the same. He wasn't the same, basically. So I still need to see a little bit more from Brock Purdy. Coming off the injury is when I'll really see if Brock Purdy, if he gets the opportunity to start, if he is potentially the franchise guy. But as it sits right now, in this time and day right now, June 5th, July 5th, right? Is it June or July? I can't even remember right now. June 5th.
It's July.
July 5th.
It really
right?
is in
July
summer
5th.
mode.
Listen,
Right
we
now-
want another June repeat just to keep
We don't know.
the weather going.
Becca, what do you think?
I would agree with Amin. I don't think we have enough years with either one of them to know whether or not we have a franchise quarterback. He's exactly right. We've seen small sample size, games from all of these quarterbacks, including Garoppolo, where you just don't know. One year it's great. The next year someone figures you out. Even Colin Kaepernick, you have these guys, someone comes in and they figure these guys out, and then, they fall off or injuries happen and they're never quite the same. So I think it's really an unknown for us at this point in time. I don't think we have enough information or data. Is there potential? Sure. They're talking about, I read the article in The Athletic about the one test they do that, Drew Brees' level of scoring with Purdy's scores on that test, and, elite quarterback status type of, reflexes and reads. His ability is up there with elite quarterbacks. It's not the Wonderlic. It doesn't measure your intelligence, but it measures your quick response and your ability to process information. So is there potential? Possibly. Who knows? But I don't think we have enough to make a qualified decision at this point.
Ty, what do you think?
No, we don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows what the quarterback is. Nobody knows our problems. Man,
I think the Blues.
that's right. They're both young and developing. They're still developing. They've shown flashes of good and flashes of bad. Every expert you've spoken to or you've heard from over the course of time says it takes you 2 full seasons to evaluate a quarterback, to see what his, consistencies are, to see if he's developing from point A to point B. These guys both have less than a season combined under their belts. Now, they both have tons of potential. I love them both, right? But we still have to have this wait and see approach. So we just don't know. And until they start playing games and getting out there, and no quarterback is going to get injured this season. So at the end of the season,
Right.
maybe we'll have a better viewpoint of this. But for right now, we just don't know.
Shake the candlestick dirt.
We did.
Maddie's still waiting on you for the sage.
That's candlestick dirt.
I don't know if I can.
When
put
someone
that on
says
the air.
something,
I don't know. This is a family show.
simplistically, we shake the
I'm not sure if I'm
candlestick
supposed to
dirt.
do that.
But yes, it is candlestick dirt.
Okay, I was so confused for a second. I was like, why is she just shaking like this little glass bottle? I was like, I don't get it.
That's Bill Walsh dirt right there.
Yeah. So the story is, that my friend who had not seen Candlestick, it was already torn down at that point, wanted to go to the site. So I had an empty coffee cup in the rental car, and when we drove up, they had it all fenced off and they had a security guard there. So I drove up and I was like, hey, would you mind filling this cup up with some of the dirt from the rubble? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he filled up my cup, and we have candlestick dirt. So we, every time when someone says something like Ty just did, that no quarterbacks are getting hurt, you know, we're superstitious. So we shake the candlestick dirt to ward off the bad juju.
Right. Good vibes. Good vibes.
Only good vibes. The ghost of, you know, Bill Walsh and Joe and all these, you know, the winnings and all the good stuff that happened in Candlestick right there.
And there you have it about the candlestick dirt.
The Cliff Note.
Ty, I'm going to turn to you about the Jennifer Lee Chan conversation with Trey Lance.
Yes.
You want to highlight that and talk about it a bit before we get the rest of everybody else's comments?
Yeah. Well, so they met at TEU, and Jennifer just sat down with him for a few minutes and talked to him more about his mental health, you know, his state of mind, how he's feeling about things more than anything else. And he just spoke positively. He's in a good space. You know, he's happy playing football again, which we all know. We've heard that before. He's healthy. He's doing well. He's been hanging out with his teammates, building up camaraderie. And more importantly, he's been learning through them, which I found very fascinating. You know, he talked about how at TEU he's just listening to those guys and absorbing information that they gave, basically. So it was very refreshing and very insightful to hear that, you know, he's once again doing something positive for himself and his teammates, and he's in a good headspace.
Yeah, he definitely is. The way he talked about Travis Kelce and just the freedom he has in the offense, you know, and then you look at other tight ends and how they, you know, are used in their offense. And he said, you know, how it was very educational for him as far as how each player sees the game. He also spoke about George Kittle, saying that, you know, his explosiveness and his speed, his ability to make the plays, he's probably one of the toughest guys he ever had to throw to. So just working on that at tight end university. I mean, they didn't spend that much time together, but just to kind of, you know, just to be familiar with it. And he also talked about Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes' relationship. And whereas Travis Kelce can see how Patrick Mahomes is moving in the pocket and where he's going to go with the ball, and it just makes it that much easier. But yeah, I agree with you, Ty. We've heard this. He's definitely in a good spot physically and mentally. And like you said on Twitter, it's only a matter of time for somebody to come out and spin this in a negative light. But we are here for the positive today.
Yeah.
So Maddie, what do you think about all this?
Bunch of wasted energy, man. That's what I think about it, right? That's really what I think about it. I think it's a bunch of wasted energy. Like, for people to be that negative and jump on something like that, like they're Ralphie jumping on top of Scott Farkas. Like, it just absolutely makes no sense to me whatsoever. Like, none at all. Like, I think the TU event, the best part about it is, like, it really draws these guys into a secondary place that they're not getting that same. I don't think they're going to get as much if they're not there, right? That's just another level of them to add that chemistry on. It's something that a lot of coaches in the league talk about. Like, guys just don't, they're not out there working all the time. Not everybody's, not everybody's up at 5 o'clock in the morning doing the Kobe Bryant workouts, right? Like, some of these guys are just doing the bare minimum and showing up when they have to show up, and that's really it. And this is just another thing to show you that the guys we have.
Uh-oh.
He's leaving us with a cliffhanger. The guys we have what? Talk to me, Matt.
And it's
Give it to
time.
me.
It's time. Maddie's frozen.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
Oh,
And he's back.
I think you're back.
We had a
Was I
commercial break.
gone?
Yes.
You were.
All right.
We stopped at the guys we have.
The guys we have are constantly working hard. Like they don't stop. They're never not working, right? Every time I turn around, like they're working. Brock Purdy's getting engaged. He's working, right? Like, even when he's not working, he's working.
To some, with Brock Purdy getting engaged, that's like kind of a hindrance on the offseason. Like he should be getting his arm right.
He probably is. Like that's a big stretch there. And also, like I want my quarterback having somebody at home, keeping him grounded, like that's what I want. That's how I feel about it. You know what I mean? I'm young and I'm old enough to remember the Drew Bledsoe moshing somewhere before a Tampa Bay game back in the late 90s, and the Patriots played like absolute garbage that week against a not great Tampa team at the time. Like there are so many times that like you prefer that. Like I want him to fit into that mode. You know what I mean? Like that guy, the franchise guy that's there for a little bit. And I guess I pissed Ty off so much about it that he's like, I'm done.
He's done.
I didn't go far.
He's back.
He didn't go far. He's back.
I heard everything.
He just came back from the void. It was really good. I don't know. It was good. To me, that's one of those grounded things. Like he's not out, doing other things, right? Like to me, that's all part of building a life. You know what I mean? And football's a big part of these guys' lives. So for them to take a few minutes to, drop an engagement ring on somebody he's been with for quite a while. Christian McCaffrey dropped an engagement ring this offseason. We're not like,
sure
do you
No
think they do like a doubleheader wedding? Like
Yeah.
Saturday is Purdy and then like Sunday's McCaffrey. Like, do you think you can get like a discount if you book the same place? Like back-to-back weddings, back-to-back days?
They're in two different tax brackets. If I was Brock, I'd tag on to that.
Well, I mean, when he can use the Super Bowl MVP paycheck to pay for it, it's no big deal.
Olivia makes
That's a down payment to a
good
house.
money too.
Olivia's making bank, so
yeah, she is definitely making some money. I don't think. Yeah. Besides, McCaffrey shouldn't have to pay for that. Like the parents of the bride are supposed to pay for that, right? So it doesn't matter. It should be on everybody's side. Catalina wine mixer, bitches. Let's go.
I mean, what do you think about Jennifer Lee Chan and her combo with Trey?
I mean, I didn't see it, right? Like this is where something like I didn't see it, but like I don't really take a lot of stock into that anyways, because number one, this might be a very vague answer, but you could be lying on interview, you could be lying, in front of the camera, but just knowing Trey Lance and like seeing, in the short sample size and just seeing him throughout his time on the 49ers, Trey Lance, in just like even before the draft, right? You see Trey Lance having to overcome adversity, and he's done it before. And when people have told him he couldn't do something, or that he's been doubted, he's overcome it. You look going back to college. You look even right now with this time on the Niners. Now this is obviously something that he has to overcome. Even like the media, and obviously all the talk that people are talking about him. But one thing that I do know about Trey Lance is that he's shown the ability to overcome adversity. And, like I said, I didn't see the interview, but from what I do know is that, just seeing Trey Lance, he has a work ethic. He's shown the ability to overcome adversity. And those are things that, like, just me as a fan, and even if I was a coach, right? And I think I've even said this on the show before, but, like, there was a question earlier in the chat about, is it hard to find, a franchise guy? When I look at just any franchise, not even just a franchise quarterback, but I'm looking at just any franchise player, there's two things that I take into consideration. Not only just what you're able to do on the football field, but the type of person that you are, and also if you have a work ethic, if you're dedicated to your craft. And when you look at Trey Lance and you see him working out in the offseason, you see him putting in the work, what that tells me is that he's dedicated towards his craft. And I take more stock into that than I do maybe into an interview, in a dead period, in the dead period of the offseason, then yeah.
Gotcha. Is this Purdy Lance situation like Montana and Young? Maddie?
Well, I mean, we have to put that in perspective, right? Because they're not quite Joe Montana and Steve Young yet, right? At the time, Joe Montana was already Joe Montana. He had won 2 Super Bowls. He had not won the other 2 yet. And there were
Totally different.
questions. Does he still have it? Right? Is he still the guy? We got to bring this competition in for him, with Steve Young. Also, we got to keep him healthy because in 85 and 86, you had some interesting cats in there playing quarterback for the 49ers. So, but in that aspect of it, if you take off the fact that they're not each a Hall of Fame quarterback quite yet that has won a Super Bowl, very similar situations, but it's in kind of a weird reverse mode, right? Like, it's like this is an alternate universe, and instead of Joe Montana coming in for Steve DeBerg, in this case, Brock Purdy came in for Jimmy Garoppolo, who wasn't even supposed to be the starter, right? Like he wasn't supposed to be there. He was just an insurance policy last year. He just
Right.
happened to
Right.
fall into it, and there he is.
We
So
just had
in
to
this
cash
case,
in.
yeah, it would be like Steve Young was the starter, and then he got hurt, so they played Steve DeBerg, and then Joe Montana came in and took over for Steve DeBerg. That would be the only way you could like do an exact comparison, because it's kind of those three styles of quarterbacks. It's really weird how the whole thing kind of offsets. But the way it originally happened was DeBerg, Montana, then Young, then Montana fought Young off, and then Montana got hurt, and then George Seifert didn't want to bring Montana back for that reason. So he basically sat for an entire year in '92, and then he got shipped off to Kansas City. But so Young eventually ended up getting the job after Walsh left. But like, it's very similar. It's they're looking for the guy who can be a dual threat, or you have the guy who can occasionally be a dual threat, but he's more of a pocket passer who can shift around in the pocket. And then you had the other guy that you replaced and you shipped him off, and he's going to go be a starter probably everywhere in the league 4 or 5 times before he's out of the league, right? He'll have a couple years with the Raiders. They'll have a couple years somewhere else, a couple years somewhere else. I could see him doing a very Steve DeBergish thing and playing until he's like 44 and like getting those emergency starts. And, it's craziness. Like Steve DeBerg played long enough. Not only was he the starter in '79, but he played long enough to play in the Leon Lett game in 1993 because he started for the Dolphins off the street when Dan Marino tore his Achilles. Like, there's all sorts of weird stuff with like that guy and the whole thing. If you take all three of them together, yeah, it's very similar. Hopefully, we have the same problems where it turns out like, wow, 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks fighting over the same position. It'd be really exciting if that was the case. But it's not quite at that point yet. So you really have to look at it as such.
I have a question
Sure.
for Maddie or whoever wants to answer this question. All right, so I just need some context. The year that Montana obviously got hurt against the Giants,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think it was that the year that Steve Young came in, and then he got an opportunity. Or am I?
So let me we'll back it up. Montana got hurt a couple of times.
Yeah.
Okay.
He got hurt a couple of times.
Let me actually hit a quarterback back then.
Yeah, you could hit a quarterback back then. So that was a thing,
Yeah.
right? That was a big deal.
Against the Giants, the big one was 87.
Lawrence Taylor,
wasn't
I
it?
think.
Yeah, it was the '86 playoffs. There was a game they lost 49-3, ironically enough. And then Taylor hit. No, it was Jim Burt that hit him, and
It was
Lawrence
Jim
Taylor
Burt that
picked him
hit
off
him,
and did the
and he
big
hit his
pick
head.
six.
Miss Jim Bird.
And he was and like he went right into the Meadowland concrete at that point. But he had gotten hurt. He gotten hurt a little bit the year before, but he had gotten hurt earlier that year in a game against Tampa where he just made an awkward throw and it threw in, like, they had to do major back surgery and he was out for 6 weeks. And Bill Walsh thought that Joe Montana wasn't going to come back. Like, he looked awful. He was in the hospital. It was bad. But he ended up coming back week 10 and tearing up the Cardinals, and he ended up doing his thing and living his life and doing his stuff and kind of coming back. But he'd still have these on and off sort of deals, and that's when Walsh was like, "Oh, I gotta trade for Young. I need somebody who can take over if Joe Montana can't continue." And then Joe Montana could continue, and then he's like, "Oh, I've got both of these guys." And then he played them against each other a little bit in '87. He played them against each other a lot in '88, and then all his coaching staff in '88 basically said, "Listen, we're done if you don't play Joe Montana moving forward." And Montana didn't have one. It wasn't a great game. The game after that, but the game after that, they kind of got on fire, and then they went on to win the Super Bowl in '88. So.
And then the year after Steve Young took over, or would...
No, the Montana won. They actually won back to back.
Back to
The
back.
89 team.
back Super Bowls.
The 89 team. They went back to back with Montana. Then in 90, they could have three-peated. Then he got hurt against the Giants again. But that hurt against the Giants is not what kept him out the next year. He just had a random elbow injury that popped up in preseason, and then he ended up needing surgery for it. Very similar to what Brock Purdy had for the UCL, but at the time they didn't really know what it was. And then like they went in and fixed it, but they didn't fix it right. Something was missing, or they had to go in and take out a screw or a staple or a stitch or some other stupid thing. So it ended up getting delayed, and then he ended up coming back about halfway through the next year, being healthy enough, but they didn't activate him until the final game on a Monday night against, was it Detroit? I think it was against Detroit. And he threw
it was the Lions.
And he threw 2 touchdowns. And the second touchdown, he audibled. There was supposed to be a run play, but they audibled into a pass play, and he threw the touchdown. And then he got traded to Kansas City in the offseason.
Seaford wanted it to be a run play, and Mike called it a pass play form.
All right, so one last question is, what were the Niners' record Steve Young's first year? Like, or were they?
So in 87, they went 13-2. That was a strike year. So there was a game missed. But him and Montana Montana mostly played that year, but in the playoff loss to the Vikings, Montana got benched for Young in the second half. And then that's what started all this garbage. I want to say Young was like 2-2, maybe like 2-3 in 88, but
Young's first year. I'm talking about Young's first like full year.
How many starts did he get in 87? Not a lot. I think he got a couple, but it was like it's very similar to. I'll explain it. I'll explain it in modern day terms. It's very similar to the situations that Trey Lance got, right? Like very one-offy sort of situations. And then it would be unique, like that game against the Giants where Joe Montana had to come off the bench and throw it deep to Jerry Rice. What was that? That was 87, or no, that was 88. But that was the same deal where Young had started in that game and fumbled 3 times, then ended up having to be benched for Montana. So Young got off to a rough start. Steve Young didn't come off like firing on all cylinders. Like, so that's why we got to be patient with Trey Lance. Like, these guys are learning so much. And for him to be in a situation where he can absorb things from Patrick Mahomes is just brilliant, right? Like, that is the absolute best case scenario that you could ask for. So, to answer your question, a lot of similarities, but it's jumbled up a little bit.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's different because Joe was the incumbent. He was the established guy. Then you had young Steve coming in, who had been in the league a few years, but he didn't have much playing time under his belt, right? So he was still young and raw. So it's like basically you had an established guy versus a young guy. And that's where the difference is. Right now, as you know, we got 2 very young guys who we just don't know what they are, who they're going to be, and we're trying to figure that out. So there's a big difference.
You want to chime in, Becca?
They said everything I was
Exactly. All right, well, we got to stop stealing Becca's thunder.
All right, well, I needed that context because you look at it with this Niners team right now, and you guys said there's a lot of similarities, just a little bit differences. But you look at this Niners team right now, and a lot of Niners fans say the problem with starting Trey Lance, even if he does struggle, is that the Niners are a win now team. They're in win now mode. They have this window. They're trying to win a Super Bowl. You know, this roster isn't getting any younger. They're trying to win a Super Bowl, right? Now, this is a tweet that I saw earlier today, but Steve Young's first year, he had like a 50% something completion percentage, threw for 9 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, was not great. And someone put out a thing on Twitter, was he put out these blank stats, and he said, if this is one of these quarterbacks' first year, and in his first year, would you consider this a good year or a bad year? And 70% of the people said this was a bad year from this quarterback, first year starting, and that quarterback was Steve Young. Right? So the point that I'm trying to make is this. Obviously, I want this team to be sick, so I want them to win. But at the same time, for me, right, and for a lot of Niners fans, is that personally, like, let's say Trey Lance, he did good in training camp, he did good in preseason, he might throw an interception maybe every game, but the Niners are still scoring, like kind of like a 2-to-1 touchdown ratio. Maybe one game he might have 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He might miss a throw here and there, but you see the improvement and you see the development, and he's playing good enough for the Niners to win football games. But the thing is, it's gonna take time with Trey Lance. And a lot of you look at even guys right now, like Maddie made up the point with Josh Allen, is that Josh Allen wasn't Josh Allen his first year. The only couple of guys in this league right now that were stars from year one were Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. Those are like two that come to mind. But outside of that, Josh Allen took a while to get to where he was. It took him a couple of years to develop and get better. So you look at Steve Young, for example. Now let's say Trey Lance is the quarterback week one. He's getting better. He's doing okay. The Niners are, they're winning football games. And let's say the Niners are sitting at 500 or 3-2 or 4-2 by the bye week. I would still start Trey Lance only because you have to give him time to develop and you have to let him grow as a quarterback, because it'll take time for him to develop and to become what we all expect him to become. If they counted out Steve Young after year one, Steve Young wouldn't be Hall of Famer, 49ers Super Bowl champion Steve Young if the Niners fans counted him out or the coaches said, you know what, Steve Young, you're not that guy. So what the point basically that I'm trying to make is that now obviously if Trey Lance is really, really bad and we're losing football games, then obviously you can't play the kid. But if Trey Lance is, he's getting better game by game. Now, obviously he's going to make mistakes, but if he's getting better game by game, you see the improvement and he's doing better and the Niners are still able to win football games with Trey Lance, I feel like you have to play Trey Lance throughout the season, regardless of even Purdy's health, even if Purdy's able to come back and he's on the sideline and he's suited up. If Trey Lance is winning football games and he's getting better and you see the improvement, and he's going to make mistakes, right? We obviously, everybody expects that. He's going to make mistakes, but if you're still able to win with Trey Lance, the point that I'm trying to make is that he needs time. And if he gets that time and if we're still able to win with him this year, I do feel like regardless of Brock Purdy's health, the Niners should start him for the full season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do have a question. This is when I actually, go to the left of
Okay,
Twitter.
here we go. The left field question.
Is Brock Purdy like Jimmy G?
In what way?
Is there some sort of context you want to put that in?
As just, his play on the field, like how he is he like Jimmy G?
Did you ever see Kyle Shanahan look at Jimmy G longingly like that in the locker room?
Yes. Yes. Keep it real. Yes. Let's not play that love story game. Nope. Okay. Not on my show. Not having it.
If that's the case, then that's fine. Then
not having it.
Same guy. Same lightning rod stop.
Smiling at Trey Lance on the field. Kyle likes his guys.
Oh, he does.
All right.
He does.
Yeah.
I just don't remember. I just don't remember them trying to remake the Walsh Montana photo with anybody like the way they did with the Shanahan Purdy thing. Now, whoever caused that, so be it. But it's real interesting. I believe the team put out that photo. So, whatever you want to put there.
However you want to. Lee Chan's photo video.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I think it was Jennifer Lee Chan's photo. Yeah.
There you go. Which might as well be team.
She's at it again. You know what? I got to talk to her.
Man,
stop putting out stuff.
Get her on the
You're
show.
doing too much, Jennifer. You're doing too much work.
Working too hard.
I think Kyle thinks he can, mold these guys into something else. He saw potential in Jimmy, and Jimmy just had inconsistency problems. I do not think Purdy is Jimmy in that way. I think Purdy has proven that he's far more accurate, and yes, he's made some rookie mistakes. He's not perfect, but I think he's doing what Kyle thought he could do and what he had hoped that Jimmy Garoppolo could do, but Jimmy was just not able to do it. I don't think they're the same.
Personally. I agree. I don't think they're the same either.
They're the same pre-injury Jimmy. If you go back and look at those games, Jimmy was balling. He was throwing the ball deep, using his leg. using his legs. He was commanding the offense, talking to his guys. Jimmy was that dude. We all thought we had something. We was like, all right, we
No,
still
I
got to
always
see
worried
more.
about Jimmy. I
We
did.
got to see more. We all needed to see more, but we was like, okay, if he can develop, we
If
got
he can
something,
develop, right? Like there was
right?
always this,
Yeah,
where's
if
the
he if
rest of
he because
it?
he's still a rookie. He still hasn't done anything. He really
No, I meant
after
Jimmy
that
G.
season Jimmy, after that season, he only had 6.5 games total under his belt.
Okay, he's made of glass. That's a problem.
So but then we saw the injuries happen, and then we
It's a
saw the
problem.
inconsistent play happen, and
And
then it
that's
was
a
like, okay,
problem. I don't think they're
we
the same.
we realized his ceiling, but for the small sample size beginnings, they look very similar. Now, will Brock have, inconsistency, or will he grow? That's the question. That's what we don't know. And that's the point where everybody needs to pump their brakes and stop, joining the bandwagon and be like, "Oh, he's elite." No, we don't know that yet.
Well, we don't know if he's elite, but he's
He has
definitely,
he has the potential to be, but
yeah.
we don't know that right now.
I
Here
think
on
he's totally
July
outplayed Jimmy.
5th. Amin's got me saying June. Damn it, Amin. On July 5th.
June.
We don't know if
Rewind.
he's elite, right?
It is Wednesday, July 5th, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No problem.
But yeah, but as of right now, they look the same. Now, let's see what happens as time goes on.
Wait, you said right now they look the same?
I said pre-injury
Oh.
Jimmy.
Oh.
Like pre-torn ACL.
I agree with Ty 10,000%. Is that
10,000.
he reminds me of pre-injury Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of not being afraid, in terms of making plays, running around, scrambling, throwing sidearm passes, finding guys in the end zone, making things happen basically, right? And pre-injury Jimmy, that's what pre-injury Jimmy did. Post-injury Jimmy didn't do that. And if you look at just Purdy this season, like, for example, Purdy, if he sees George Kittle running a streak 30 yards down the field and he sees, Christian McCaffrey as his check down, 5 yards, in front of him and the pocket's collapsing, or like Brock Purdy will make that throw if he sees a wide open George Kittle. Whereas Jimmy, even if he saw that, either Jimmy would, I'm not going to say overthrow it, I'm not going to bash Jimmy, but Jimmy would be conservative and he would probably hit, Christian McCaffrey on that check down.
And
There's
this is why they're not the same.
and that's why they're not the same. It's because Brock Purdy isn't afraid to, throw that deep pass here, or make that risky throw here, or even fit it into tight coverage. There was times in the beginning of his little, in his games that he started where he would throw it in tight windows, and you're like, whoa, that would have been a pick right there, but you still, you still had the confidence to make that throw. So the risk taking,
if that were Jimmy, it would have been a pick. You mean? So you're saying exactly what I'm saying. I mean that they're not the same, and you're
hold
absolutely
on,
providing all backup data.
Hold on. Let's not forget that Brock was very lucky this season. He had 5 or 6 INTs dropped. So he did do
how many had
Jimmy
Jimmy had? I mean, come on, think about how many dropped Jimmy Garoppolo interceptions there were. Good Lord.
Can we talk about this for a second?
Go ahead, Ty.
Trey is coming back from serious injury. Will he be the same? This strikes me funny because you have a guy coming back from a foot injury, an ankle injury. It's a broken bones heal, right? But it's his freaking ankle. He's not a runner anyway. He's really a pocket quarterback. His arm is fine. You got 2 other quarterbacks who both suffered injuries to their throwing arm last season coming back this year. And no one seems to be concerned about that, really. Like, everyone's like, Trey's coming back from a serious injury. So are the other 2 guys. Sam Darnold said he's still getting some rehab done on his shoulder. So it's like, what are we doing here? What's the real concern?
I think I've heard more about Brock's arm than Trey's ankle.
But with Brock's arm, it's really talking about the timeline of his return. It's not the seriousness of his injury, really. It's more
Yeah.
like, all right, he's returning. We're hopeful, right? It's like, yeah. And then it's like Trey broke his ankle. Will he be the same? Can he plant and throw? It's a weird dynamic going on.
Kelly says, if Jimmy was our quarterback versus Dallas last season, do we win that playoff game?
Can I
Maddie.
ask this question? Or Maddie?
Yeah, go ahead. Amin.
No, go ahead.
No, we would not win that play. We would not win that game. If you look at, and that's what Purdy does. That's so special is that Purdy doesn't have the strongest arm. Purdy isn't the most athletically gifted guy. Purdy isn't the fastest. But one thing that Purdy does is that he's efficient. He knows where to go with the football. But the biggest thing is that Purdy doesn't make mistakes. And that's the thing and that's the thing. Even in that Dallas game, it was a tight back and forth game. But Brock Purdy did not have an interception. Obviously, he didn't throw it for a touchdown, but he didn't make a mistake.
He almost had one.
Huh?
He almost had one.
He almost had one. He almost had
You
one.
see what I'm saying? It's
He
like just
almost had
because
one.
you get lucky, it's like you can't say he wasn't perfect. I mean,
He wasn't perfect. He wasn't
perfect, right? And he didn't make a mistake.
He didn't make a mistake.
Right. You see what I'm saying? But he got away with it. Good for us. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the thing though. In that game in specific, when it was a back and forth, because Brock Purdy doesn't make mistakes that much or that often, he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. That helped us in that game, and that ended up, helping us win that football game. And obviously the defense balled out. But the thing about Jimmy is that, even Jimmy in his best games, for example, like the best game I can think of Jimmy was against the Saints, 4 touchdowns. But I think he also had 2 interceptions in that game. So even when Jimmy had his best games or the games that you look at Jimmy, you were great. Jimmy still has turnovers and puts the ball in harm's way. So in that game, obviously it's tough, but I wouldn't be confident if Jimmy was a quarterback that game that we would win.
I think we'd have won it. It was the same game plan.
I agree, me.
I think we'd have won it.
Shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure you like and subscribe to us, the East Coast Red and Gold on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And of course, IE Sports Radio has been doing it now for 9 whole years. That's right. For the last 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the world. Make sure you're following IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with the latest in sports and with our shows. And of course, make sure to check out the daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show is scheduled and the show pages, personal bios, and the podcast feed for each individual show, including this one, iesportsradio.com/East Coast Red and Gold. In addition to the show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, the Hall of Fame, the Fans of the Month, merchandise, and much, much more. It's been nearly a decade, looking to make it a decade more at least. IE Sports Radio should be your direct feed for all that is sports.
East Coast Red and Gold podcast. Transitions that are smooth like butter.
Smooth.
All right, so I got 2 more questions. Being that we spent most of the episode talking about quarterbacks, which is fine.
I know. Damn it.
Amin, is the defensive line depth-wise more of a concern than the offensive line?
No.
Depth-wise.
Depth-wise, no, it isn't more of a concern. Only because you look at the starters that we have on the offensive line right now, outside of Aaron Banks and Trent Williams, and who's our center, Jake Brunskill. That right
Brendel?
side,
Jake Brendel.
Jake Brendel.
Brendel, yeah, Jake
Yeah.
Brendel.
Yeah.
I mixed up.
Brunskill's gone.
Dan Brunskill, Jake Brendel,
Yeah.
whoever they
Brunskill's
are.
gone.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
but Jake Brendel, outside of that left side, that right side with Spencer Burford, who's going to be the right tackle, Colton McKivitz, that side I'm a little bit worried about, right? So even the starters that we have on the offensive line, 2 of those guys, I don't know what they'll be. I don't know if they'll be able to hold up. On that defensive line, the starters that we have on that defensive line, I'm confident in, right? Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa, who doesn't miss that many games after the torn ACL, right? The starters that we have on that team, they don't miss games, and I'm more confident in the starters on the defensive line. So even depth wise considered, I'm not as worried as at the defensive line because our starters are able to stay healthy on the defensive line. And the Niners have pretty good depth on the defensive line in general, and the last couple of years they've had good depth on the defensive line. Looking back at last year, whereas the offensive line, the two starters I don't know about, but even the guys that they have behind those starters are young guys like Nick Zakelj, Jason Poe. Right,
Mhm.
there's a lot of unknowns on that offensive line, where on that defensive line there's not that many.
Maddie, what do you think?
When it comes to the things that happened with this team in terms of, this is back to the whole, like, are they gonna win with the right quarterback against Dallas? That was the question? Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Okay, good. I want to just take a second, and I want to picture Josh Johnson in the game real quick against the Cowboys. I just want to take that moment, and I want to think about it. I want everyone to think about it, and then I want you to think about how that would have gone. So, yeah, that's all I got for that, because that game was not pretty for a while. That was one thing that I really liked about Purdy. Like, he bounced back from, this defense that is ranked higher than the 49ers, which I continue to not understand why, but it's okay. It's Dallas. It's fine. Cowboys fans everywhere. They're America's team, I guess. But yeah, he did the thing. And we get real lucky that he didn't get hurt any sooner, that's for sure. Or there would have been a trip to Philadelphia, which maybe would have been a bad thing.
Thanks.
So, getting to the next question, is the defensive line more of a concern than the offensive line, depth-wise?
I don't think it's more of a concern. I actually think they've got plenty, and I also think they're going to be in a really good position to grab any sort of depth that falls on the street, defensive line wise, in terms of anybody getting cut at camp, cap casualties, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's going to be a destination. I think Hargrave being there really rights a lot of wrongs, is really what it boils down to. I think it actually turns it into one of the strengths. So, and I think Farrell's going to actually unlock another level as well, and then get his thing to way to go. Like, I've seen a lot of different tape on him lately, and I think there's definitely something there to work with. Like, there's a reason he got drafted where he did, whether it was too high for whatever or not, but sometimes it just doesn't work out someplace. So, that's I think this defensive line is actually going to be the make or break of this team. So you're 100% correct. Like, I mean, probably on your end of it, like, yeah, it's probably not quite as deep as the offense, but at the same time, like, I think it's almost it's the pendulum on the swing, really, is at this point. Like, if they dominate and play better, or even just play better than they did last year, this team is going to be much better than it was last year, which is a pretty scary thought.
Becca?
I think, we have drafted some players that, fit Steve Wilkes. I'm seeing all these positive things about Isaiah Oliver and his size for nickel, defensive guy, and how positive that's going to be. So I think, the cupboard is stocked really well on the defense. I mean, I think, to everyone's point on the offense, our offensive line doesn't have, I don't think, a ton of depth, but we always seem to next man up, and these guys step in there and play well. I do think the defense seems to have a really deep bench. So, if someone is out, you've got experienced backup players, plus we draft well. And it seems like we've drafted some pretty good players this year as well. So I'm less concerned about the defense than the offense. If I had to answer the core of the question there, right? The essence of that question is, I think the defense is much stronger depth-wise than the offense.
Ty, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the D line at all.
Yeah.
We know Chris Kasarik is going to have those guys hunting. They're going to be hungry. I mean, even last year when um, a couple of guys got injured and we had to like rotate in a Jordan Willis, a Hassan Redway, a T.Y. McGill. They were still getting after it, right? It wasn't until those guys got injured additionally and we were kind of depleted that we saw a big drop off in the pass rush. So as long as, health isn't a concern, I think we're fine. It's going to be interesting to see who we actually keep after training camp because we're so, like usual, we're so deep with defensive linemen. You know, who's going to make the final 53? So D line is not a concern depth wise.
I think we're good on both sides of the ball. And two names that stick out and will be key are Chris Kasarik and Chris Forster.
Oh,
Yeah. They're the guys that drive the whole thing.
absolutely.
Right.
As we talked about before, coaching totally matters.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely does. Amin, one more for you. What's your record prediction for this year?
Floor. I don't know what a floor I would say is 12-4. I think I don't know the new like NFL. Is it like 13 and
17 games. 17
17?
games.
All right, so
Use
floor
that
I
high
would
school
say
math.
floor I would say is 13-4, and ceiling I would say is 15 wins.
Okay. All right.
We don't win
All
15.
right.
We're going to come back to you.
What's that?
Said if we don't win 15 games, we're going to come back to you. I mean,
Yeah.
like you
Right.
said.
We
Yep.
have it on tape.
I also think we go 15-2 as well. So
Yeah.
for sure. Anybody got anything else?
Zane Gonzalez, man. We're not going to talk about Zane
Oh,
in the
yeah,
member.
all right.
Oh,
Yes.
I was going to say that ESPN list of ranking
National-
our roster like 9th or something. Did anybody
National-
see that?
Let's talk
National
about that.
kicker advocate Ty. Like, and I like Becca's thing too.
You know,
Go ahead, Ty.
Zane Gonzalez is out there putting in work. He's trying to show everybody he's in the competition. The old man is this. Well, he's not old, but he's
By our
out there
standards.
I know he's out there kicking, saying, "I'm taking this seriously." So that might be something to watch during camp.
Yeah,
If he
he
can
was right by that logo.
Yeah, kicking from the logo, showing he's got some range. Don't get excited about Jake Moody. I'm here too.
The boot should be worried as he kicks from 70 yards out. I see you.
No, but I was impressed. He was splitting the uprights like it was.
Right down the middle.
Yeah.
So
wait till the wind's blowing, the game's on. There's it's still 2 seconds left in the game for the win to go to the playoffs. Then we'll see.
Take your eyes off the quarterback in training camp.
Yeah,
Show kickers some love. Kickers need love too.
That kicker competition is going to start grabbing the headlines. You wait and see.
That's right.
Just for you, Ty.
Hey, you know what? You never know.
You never know. That's right.
If you want some real clicks and views, talk about the kicker. Damn it. I couldn't even say it with a straight face. Oh my gosh.
You were so close. You
I'll
almost
do
made
better
it.
next time.
Almost had it.
You're
I'll
right
do
there.
better next
If you
time.
had disappeared into your background, you might have gotten away with it.
Oh, I know.
So Becca, what did ESPN say?
I saw their ranking of all the team rosters.
Yes.
And we're like 9th or something on the
Should've
roster
captured
list.
that. Yep.
That's
And
terrible.
yeah, it was like the most garbage of the list, and I didn't get a chance. I saw it earlier today. I was working, of course, so I didn't get a chance to look and see like what the criteria was and how did we end up 9th or 10th on that whole list of overall rosters. I'm like, Kansas City was first. Why? Because they won the
Yep.
Super Bowl. That doesn't mean they have the best roster by
Exactly.
any stretch. So I don't know. I saw it and I was just like, I wonder if any of you guys saw it and what you thought about it.
I saw
I
it. I
mean, you
should have
saw
grabbed
it?
it for the show.
Yeah, I saw it, and just in general, looking at these like NFL like rankings lists and like roster lists, what a lot of people, the reason why the Niners are like lower than they should be on a lot of these lists are because of their quarterback situation. Like a
There's
lot of
only one.
people don't know what's going on with the Niners quarterbacks, and for that reason alone, a lot of people are like, "Yo, the Niners, they have a good team, but who's their quarterback?" So we're gonna put them, below the Bengals and below the Chargers and below this and below
Yeah.
that because those guys have quarterbacks. But the Niners, who do they have at quarterback? Brock Purdy's injured, Trey Lance is a bust, and and Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold sucks. So a lot of people, for that reason alone, because of the quarterbacks, a lot of people have the Niners lower than they should be.
Yeah, if you go look at the list, I should have brought it. Um, I should have saved it, Jess. We
Damn
got to
it,
get on
Tom.
that. I know, slacking. And like every team ahead of us just has an established quarterback.
That's true.
But if you look at it like position for position, like is the running back group better? No. Are the wide receivers better? No. Is the D line better? No.
Well, that was what was blowing my mind. I'm like, what criteria is this based on?
Yeah.
Because
See, like
how
even if
in
you're
the world is our roster ninth? Or
even
Yeah,
if
I'm
you're
telling
doing a list like that, right? Like the Chiefs shouldn't be number one because let's look at the key guys on the Chiefs. It's Mahomes, it's Kelsey, and Chris Jones. Who else is really
That's it.
prominent on that team where you're like, okay, that guy's
Right.
a Pro Bowler? That
That's
like
it.
no,
Right?
that's it, right? So like, okay, if I had to rank it like just like my top two on that list, or even like maybe let's say hypothetically top three, the two that instantly come to mind are Miami, just looking at roster alone, and then
Mhm.
the Niners, right? The issue with Miami is it's Tua,
His
what
health.
Tua Tagovailoa. If you look
Yeah.
at just roster, talent on the roster, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, they obviously have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I mean, they're a really good team, and they might even add Dalvin Cook, in free agency, and they might even sign Dalvin Cook to add to that team. And then it would be the Niners. The Niners are, just in terms of talent on the roster,
On the
Javon Hargrave,
roster,
Nick
right?
Bosa, like in terms of just roster, right? Not who's the best team, who's going to project to win the most games. In terms of roster, the Niners should be no lower than 4 or 5 on any list in terms of just roster.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm like, we had to be top five somewhere. I mean, there could be arguments made for some other teams, of course, but I was like, how the hell are we like ninth or 10th on that list?
Yeah, we're way
So,
too
yeah,
low.
I saw it, but it was pretty late in the game here to go do some research. But yeah, no,
Yeah, Kelly says both BA and Debo is better than anyone Casey has at wide receiver.
Yeah, but Kadarius Toney ran back a punt last year, so he's due for a big breakout year. That's what I keep hearing from people. I am floored by that. Kadarius Toney's never stayed healthy in his life, but all of a sudden this year he's going to figure it out, I guess.
Yeah.
And they signed Richie James. Ooh.
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 Watch out now.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter who they have at receiver. Like Travis Kelce is their number one guy, and then
Yeah.
like whoever else isn't covered is going to get the ball, right? Like, so that's it. They don't really need to have that sort of. As long as they have competent guys that can catch the ball, they have a quarterback that can pretty much get it to them whenever. So
will do magic and get the ball in their hands. Yeah.
exactly. So
This might be a
we'll
dumb
do it.
hypothetical, but I've always imagined what the Niners would be like with Patrick Mahomes on this team. Like I've always just thought about it because they were right there, right? Like they were right there. They could have drafted Deshaun Watson. Now, obviously, they didn't, but they needed a quarterback. But like, I still think about, hypothetically speaking, if the Niners drafted Patrick Mahomes, how would it be?
Well,
Thanks,
I mean, this
Amin.
team wouldn't look anywhere near what it looks like right now. You know what I mean? Like Christian McCaffrey probably wouldn't be here.
That's
You
true.
know, I
But
Yeah,
to
you-
be fair, like obviously Andy Reid has done a phenomenal job in developing Mahomes, but you don't really need that. If you look at this Kansas City team, like last year, who did they have at receiver? Like Marquez Valdez Scantling.
Mhm.
Like I don't even know who they had on their team. Their cornerbacks aren't great. They're like all those guys are just average outside of Chris Jones, Kelsey. and Mahomes, like the whole team in general is just kind of like they're serviceable, but they don't really got anybody. But yet they still were able to win the Super Bowl. They make deep playoff runs every year. Now either that's just the Mahomes effect or that's Andy Reid paired with Mahomes. But you don't really need that much to be successful with Patrick Mahomes.
I would definitely say Andy Reid has something to do with it because he had great success in Philly too, with some probably mediocre quarterbacks. Otherwise, he made them look good. McNabb and
yeah, I agree.
Who's the other guy? Off the top of I'm forgetting his name. Philly quarterback
guy. Michael Vick.
Yes, thank you.
Michael Vick.
The other one.
Yeah.
Right. He made them. It showed flash of brilliance out there with those guys. So I think Andy Reid definitely has something to do with it. Coaching always matters. I said it a bunch of times. You can have a lot of talent, but unless you have the right guy leading the orchestra to get everyone playing from the same sheet of music, it's not going to sound good. If everyone starts playing their own song. So
right.
Definitely. You're talking about a pass first offense versus a run first offense.
Yeah.
So your QB development is a little different there. Like with Andy Reid, it's going to be more accelerated because you're throwing more.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're the guy staring down the barrel. You're not relying on your running game.
Right.
Like in our offense, and we've seen this. This is like no slight on anyone. Our quarterbacks can throw for 200, 210 yards a game, 0 touchdowns, and we win the game, right? Because our running game's going to take over. Our defense is going to play. That's not Andy Reid's style. Andy Reid is like, all right, defense, do the best you can do. We're going to throw this ball 40 times a game.
Hold him for a few seconds because we're gunning it anyway.
We're going to throw this ball 40 to 45 times a game, and we're going to throw deep. And we're going to try to light this puppy up. That's his MO. So it's completely different.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah.
Yep, that's true. All right. Anything else?
So, Amin, are you a bacon guy or what do you have for breakfast? I mean, you're getting old, man. I remember when I first saw you, you were a little shorter. Face was a little rounder. Now you're just aging. Soon you're gonna have the facial hair. You're gonna have this deep Barry White voice, like, "Hey there."
I mean, I went back and watched like my first time streaming and like watching some of my old like. It's so different. Like it's honestly so like I'm like whoa, like this was me last year. Like I'm like all of that happened so quickly. Whoa.
Well, you know what, Ty? He'll be geriatric group like us, right?
He's the future. Like, dude, it's on you to carry the mantle. You just grab that torch and run with it. Keep the faithful going.
Yep. All right, let's go to that hurry up offense and the 2-minute warning.
All right, hold on. See, this is what happens when you're old. You're not ready. Hold on.
Squirrel.
And there we go.
Go ahead, Becca.
Congrats to Brock Purdy on his engagement, and may the best quarterback win. And go Niners. Have a great summer, everyone. Hope everyone enjoyed their 4th of July weekend.
Maddie B.
I hope everybody had a good one. Realize we're so close to training camp where we'll actually see news and things happening. Then we'll know who everybody's going to be and who's going to make that opening man 53-man roster and go from there. So, but remember, the opening day roster is going to be much different from the end of the year roster. That's usually how that works. So just keep calm and roll with it.
Amin the Dream.
Oh, he's spazzing out.
I was like, no. And he's gone.
The Matrix took him. That was weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
That was a new one. Yeah. I'll jump in here.
I thought that was just me.
I'll jump in here. Hearing all the offseason interviews from Trey Lance, Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle, Eric Armstead, Fred Warner, the guys are in a great like mental space. They're upbeat, they're optimistic, they're feeling good. It gives you good vibes toward the season ahead as a whole. And I'm very optimistic just about that.
Congratulations to Brock Purdy on his engagement. I just want the best guy out there that gives us the best chance to win. That's who I want out there. Go Niners. We are 20 days away from training camp. And that's it. See everybody next week. Amin the Dream, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Amin.
Thanks, Amin.
And we will catch you guys next week. Go Niners. Like and
Go
subscribe.
Niners.
Bing, bang.
Bang, bang.
And of course, for the upstart 49ers, they're 6 yards away from Pontiac. 3rd and 3.
We'll see a pickup sometime on the right side, possibly.
Montana